not just about honoring the votes of 74 million Americans who voted for me. It's about ensuring that Americans can have faith in this election and in all future elections. Most Americans would also be shocked to learn that no state in the country verifies United States citizenship as a condition for voting in federal elections. This is a national disgrace.
Absolutely, it is a national disgrace. Welcome back, everybody. President Trump saying that the sanctity of the vote has to be addressed not just for this election, but for all future elections. For an overview of the president's legal challenges, we're joined now by Jordan Sekulow, Executive Director of the American Center for Law and Justice and a member of President Trump's legal team. Thanks for making the time, Mr. Sekulow. The basket of biased press using the words of Attorney General Barr saying that he hasn't seen any evidence of widespread fraud that would change the election. However, the press is leaving out the part where he says he's still investigating. First off, can you comment on what Mr. Barr did actually say and your thoughts on the president's speech?
Yeah, I think, again, we're starting to really just see this as these cases are now developing. So we're starting to see active testimony today from people who were poll watchers or people who worked for the Elections Commission. So these people who did these depositions and affidavits that were filed, now we're actually seeing courts hear that. There's a live hearing right now in Nevada, in Carson City, on what were the laws of the state followed. And there's a lot of different reasons why. Again, there's a video that just came out, in Georgia showing when they said they shut down the vote counting, and then they kept counting votes. And the video, kind of like the camera, the security camera shows that. I want to make clear to people right there, that's a huge election law violation. That is illegal. You can't count votes with no one watching, send everyone home under a phony pretense that a water main broke that actually happened at sometime very early that morning, and keep counting votes. They're on video doing that. Now, again, is it widespread fraud, or should General Barr is not necessarily saying what's happening is not illegal conduct? There's fraud, and then there's also just breaking the law, violating the law. And you'll see in a lot of the lawsuits filed, like in Wisconsin, where it's challenging 200,000 plus ballots that were cast, most of some kind of mail-in with no voter ID, 170,000, no one requested, Chris, the absentee ballot. The state law requires that. So you could say that's fraud that happened, or you could just say it's illegal and those ballots should not be counted. Those votes should not be counted because the people didn't, the laws weren't followed. So I also know there's a new lawsuit that will be filed, and we've seen a lot of lawsuits in Georgia. I've talked about them on Newsmax. Another one likely be filed very soon in Georgia, might be this evening, on the video that we're seeing just now, that the whole election is being contested, that will contest the entire election, that'll be filed on behalf of the Trump campaign.
Yeah, Jordan, I think it's a great point. Now, let's leave the press out for a moment. They seem to be rather clueless. Folks over at CNN could see that video and go, evidence? What evidence? There's no evidence. Show us the evidence. And they'd be looking right at the video. But there's an excuse for them, and we know what that's all about. But what about these alleged, air quotes, Republicans who run the state of Georgia? When they see video like this, do you think it's going to be enough to spur the governor of that state or the attorney general of that state into some sort of action, because they've been sitting on their duffs up until this point?
Yeah. Well, here, I mean, I think that Brian Kemp in Georgia, he's trying to have it both ways. In one sense, he's kind of acknowledging it, but in the other sense, he's making the arguments in court, because he's one of the people that get sued in court as his office of the governor, saying, well, you shouldn't have access to this. You shouldn't get this information. What was infuriating to me is that the Secretary of State in Georgia, also a Republican, who was out there saying, Trump is wrong and this is horrible that everybody's pointing the finger at me, even though this is his job, is to run the election. And now, because of something that happened to him personally, that this organization that was run initially by Stacey Abrams, then the Warnock campaign, the Senate race there in the runoff, one of his relatives, a family member who had passed away, a son, these number of different voter registrations. He realized now he's going to do a fraud investigation in Georgia that's going to impact the runoff election. But he was the one telling everybody, you're crazy if you think something wrong happened in the presidential election. We saw the same thing in Nevada, Chris, where 160,000 votes got tossed out in Clark County for a county commission race because they said it was so much fraud. But they still counted those votes toward the presidential race.
Absolutely crazy. I don't know how you do that. Maybe they do things differently in Nevada. Maybe it's like chips at the casino. You know, yeah, here's your vote for president, here's your vote for commissioner, here's your vote. That's not the way it works, folks. But I mean, that's what they're trying to, the kind of fraud they're trying to perpetrate out there in Nevada. Last thing, how concerned are you about the role of the bias in the press? And then as we're coming up on the Electoral College meeting, what are we at, 11 days? How concerned are you about the role of the press and that deadline that's coming up?
Listen, we're up against the wall now. I mean, everyone knows that. So on the 8th, you have the seating of the electors. On the 14th, the voting by the electors. So, I mean, obviously, all of this is on a very truncated schedule. And you've got, you know, the lawsuits that are being filed. You've got to have the information quickly available. It's always, I always tell everybody this, and I've said it each time we're on. You know, we're fighting the fight every single day, 24 hours a day. That's why new lawsuits are being filed as new information is uncovered, new evidence is uncovered, like that video in Georgia. But at the same time, I always remind people courts are a place of last resort. They're the last place you go to get justice. That doesn't mean you won't get it, but it is the toughest. So don't buy into the media. Just allow the process to play out. One, it's important for this election and to determine who will be the president. It's also important, like in Georgia, for the runoff election, because who will control the U.S. Senate, and of course, our future elections as well. I think one thing we've all learned, let's not change election laws 2 months before a general election for president of the United States and see how things work out, because it hasn't worked out well.
Hey, that's a good guidepost. Thanks very much. Jordan Sekulow, it's always great talking to you, man.
Chris.
Coming up.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.